people's resumes are awful. It was just most people didn't know what I was looking for and how I used that information as a recruiter. I think I can help people. Just for veterans, that's the Veterans Edition of Signs of a Great Resume. And
Awesome.
I began networking and meeting people in the space. I actually earned myself a personal invitation to meet in the office of First Lady Michelle Obama at the
Very
White House.
cool.
Yeah, with the program they were doing at the time called Joining Forces. And then I also met with the Warrior and Family Support Group in the office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Pentagon. To provide a fair and balanced viewpoint of how I support veterans, I was actually invited now 2 years ago, to the current administration's White House, where I delivered my resume and interview workshops at the White House Military Office. And for those of you who have not served, that's the people who drive the Beast, the president's car. They run Camp David, Air Force One, and carry around a very important suitcase in near proximity to the president all the time. So, I got to help, give a little insight to what the next chapter of their career may look like for those who are transitioning. And of course, the caveat here is no government or DOD sponsorship is implied of any sort. It's just, this is one of the many ways I've found my real passion in life, which is that I help people, especially veterans, find success in their career. Now I do one-on-one interview and resume coaching with transitioning service members from all branches, and civilians too. But I work with a number of really great nonprofit organizations who support the Veteran Transition Program and help fund services that really enable them for success in the civilian workforce. Well, in part, it's formed by my strong belief that veterans are some of the best employees we have in the civilian workforce. They're just some of the worst job candidates, because the one thing the military does not make them really good at doing while they're in is becoming a civilian job candidate. And while there are programs, there's something called TAP, Transition Assistance Programs, that start to teach some philosophical things about the transition. They only really scratch the surface. So that's why it's wonderful to see that there are many veteran service organizations specializing in this, and several programs that even the Department of Defense has started to fund to really enable their success. Where I come in is really helping to tell the story of how what you have done in the military or in any prior career relates to what you're going to do in the civilian workforce. And that's what I describe as using what you see behind me, these signs of a great resume. Now, they probably look like curse words in a comic strip. I promise I'm not teaching veterans to curse on a resume. What they are is specific moments that make you a particularly great candidate for a job. And this applies to any job seeker, not just veterans. But what I want to know as a recruiter is what you in particular bring to the future opportunity. So these signs of a great resume, the first one is the exclamation point. Wow, look at what I did. Nobody else could say that. At what point you gain the most relevant experience, and some numbers, dollars, and percent that help to quantify exactly what makes you a great fit for the job. If you ever need to remember what the signs of a great resume are, you just look down at your keyboard there above the numbers 1 through 5. That's where the signs of a great resume are. These are the key to standing out and differentiating yourself on any resume, civilian, military, or otherwise, a federal resume or any kind. You can use the signs of a great resume to write a resume that speaks for itself. So on a resume, one of the very first things that I encourage you to do is write like a summary of qualifications. I call it that and not an executive summary or a professional profile, because I want it to summarize what you can do for me. What are you qualified to do? I look at it like the movie trailer of your resume. So if you were writing a film preview, right? Like, in a world where this is my experience, what you would say to entice me to see the film is what you would put in the summary of qualifications on a resume. And that block of text on the resume is something you can tailor, like you'll tailor the rest of your resume to each job opportunity. Your LinkedIn profile, you only get one LinkedIn profile, so it should be the overall trailer about, what is it that you bring in a nutshell to any opportunity that you're pursuing. What you will never hear a recruiter say is, the candidate made it too easy to see why he's a great fit for this job. Right? That's not going to happen. And when you use the signs of a great resume, you're making the recruiter's job easier. Effectively, as a recruiter, my function is to become your sales agent. I need to pitch you to the boss and say, hey, that person you need me to hire for you, I think Dennis has what you're looking for. look at how we quantified this experience and gave specific results. The biggest mistake you can make on a resume is you write a resume that reads like a job description. So think about like a teacher who just, yeah, right? If a teacher writes, taught English classes, graded papers, tracked grades, prepares students for the next level. Well, great, that's what teachers do. But that's the job description of every English teacher. And so if I'm hiring teachers and every one of them just says that, how do I know who to hire? I don't. And that is the reality that recruiters face, is there's tons of resumes in our system or on our desk. They all look and sound pretty much the same because people make that same mistake. A resume that reads like a job description is the deadliest mistake you can make on a resume. And it's especially difficult if that job description is about a military job, because some 97% of Americans have never served. So we just don't understand as directly what that job description means and how it helps us. The very simple way to assess your current resume to see, am I making that mistake, is you take your resume and you cover your name at the top. Then you reread what you have written. If it could be anybody else's resume, it's not good enough, because I don't want to know what a project manager does or what an infantry soldier does or what a Navy captain does. What I want to know is, what did you do? And how does that relate to what I need you to do in this job?
Absolutely. And so what are, during your time of doing this, are there maybe a few examples that you could give with clients that you've had in the past that, either some tips or just examples of how you took military lingo and translated that into job candidate language?
Sure. Yeah. I get this question all the time from veterans and frankly from civilians in very technical careers who are changing the kind of work they're going to do. So this advice applies in both instances. But when it comes to explaining a prior career that does not directly align, especially when that's a military career that's changing your job function, what I want you to do, and you can do this with me live, if you're watching at home or listening, just close your eyes for a moment. And I want you to picture somewhere in your life an 11-year-old child whose parents are not in the military. Can you picture that kid? That kid knows about as much about the Army as most civilian adults. You cannot trust civilians to know what the heck you're talking about unless a fifth grader would understand you. So you got to pass what I call the smart fifth grader test with every word you write on your resume. And there are just 3 simple questions on the smart fifth grader test. The first one is, are you using simple language? Language so clear an 11-year-old would get it. And the simple answer to that, in most military resumes I get it, is no, because there's a certain language to the military. And that, of course, includes lots of capitalization and jargon and acronyms that just do not mean things to civilians. As a general rule, if you're hitting the caps lock, you're losing the civilian's understanding of what it is you're talking about. Right. Some exceptions apply. If you're using a term the average news-watching American would know, FBI, USA, those are fine. And don't bother trying to explain to most civilians that SEAL is actually an acronym for Sea, Air, and Land. Just stick with SEAL. But otherwise, avoid the acronyms and even words that you might use every day in a military career that mean different stuff to us. So, for instance, if you say deploy and you mean get sent somewhere, I might think you mean how parachutes work. They deploy. If you say joint and you mean interagency, I might think you mean arthritis or marijuana. So just keep it very simple. And the good news is, if an 11-year-old would understand it, so would another veteran. They'll just know, oh, are you actually talking about a joint team when you were da-da-da-da? They'll know all of that, but write it to the lowest common denominator of understanding, which is about the 11-year-old level. That's the first question. The second question for the smart fifth grader is, are you focused on good news only? Now, I recognize the business of fighting war is not always good news. I get it. But I don't need to hear about knocking down doors and finding bad guys or anything like it. What I want to know is, how'd you make the world a better place? And this goes back to what Dennis was saying a minute ago, where you mentioned how the specific accomplishments that a project manager might have had, how you made the world a better place. is a better way to approach the types of examples with the signs of a great resume that make you a great fit. I want to know what you did specifically. That's good news for your past employer, in this case, the military, and for your future employer, how it relates. And the third and final question for the smart fifth grader is, are you getting to the point quickly? Because both an 11-year-old and a recruiter have a super short attention span. Yeah, I'm told there's a military term that actually works nicely here. It's bluff, bottom line up front. And it's the way military leaders say, you know, when you make your PowerPoint or something, make sure you make the point right away. So if General so-and-so loses focus or has to go, you've already gotten your point across. Well, the way I think about bluff as a civilian is, can you tell me a fairy tale backwards for every bullet that you write? They all lived happily ever after. Good news, because once upon a time, here's some details if you need it. A lot of veterans say to me, Scott, I don't like talking about myself. And I think maybe that comes from service in the military is a selfless service. You're serving that greater mission. You're called to serve for whatever reason that is. And to them I say, and to everyone, I don't want you to talk about yourself. The first filter I need you to put on your resume is that while yes, your name is at the top, this resume is not about you. It's about what you can do for me. And it means that there may be things in your career that were significant. You're proud of them. They made a real difference in the world. Well, great. I'm glad you did them. But if they don't relate to what you can do for me, you might not need to tell me about them. And that becomes a powerful first filter to use. And the very simple way you use that filter on a resume is you read a statement or a line or a bullet you've got, and you ask yourself, so what? What is this new company going to do with this information? And if you can't answer the so what, and you pretty darn well, you've lived with you your whole life, how am I supposed to answer the so what if I'm the new company? That goes back to the idea of tailoring your resume. And tailoring your resume, you need to know if it's about what you can do for me, you need to know what's important to me. And the simple way to know that is I tell you, there are job postings. So when you're applying to a job, you've seen a job online on LinkedIn or Indeed, Career Builder, any of those sites, or usajobs.gov if you're applying to work in the federal government still. And the employer is giving you a literal wish list. This is what we need. And there are 3 parts to a job posting usually. There's a description, so do I want to do this all the time? And some minimum and preferred qualifications, or basic and desired qualifications. Well, the description is a good place for you to assess what's important. They may give you clues like about their culture, about their diversity and inclusion practices, and about their priorities for their business in the year ahead. And the minimum and preferred qualifications are the filters for what kinds of information you need to market to them, if you will, about your prior experience. I look at the qualifications list kind of like buying a car. The minimum qualified candidates are like Toyotas. They're fine. They're just not special. Seems like anybody could get a Toyota, and it's fine. It's a good car, very reliable. I think the number 1 selling car in America is a Toyota. But the preferred qualified candidates, the ones who are darn near perfect, are like a Rolls Royce. Woo, if I could have the perfect candidate, that'd be great. Well, you don't have to be a Rolls Royce to get an interview or to land the job. You just got to come in somewhere around Lexus to be a compelling candidate.
As a U.S. military veteran, I appreciate that you are focusing on it, as well as, of course, the general candidate search. But that's definitely what caught my eye whenever I saw your profile as to why I reached out to you.